And this is a room we know really well. It meets all expectations, it really does, and everybody who comes into the room and hears it is incredibly impressed.
While the world was mesmerized by Mark Knopfler's masterful guitar and voice, like a whispered confession in the still of night, few realized there was another figure, quietly holding the music of Dire Straits together. Guy Fletcher, the man behind the keyboard. Never chasing the spotlight, never standing center stage, yet an essential part of the band's soul. He didn't write lyrics, he didn't play guitar solos, he never had a hit under his own name. But whenever the keyboard rises in Brothers in Arms, Your Latest Trick, or Why Worry, something brushes against the listener's memory, a softness that lifts every emotion, a sound that somehow makes the song feel complete. That's the trace Guy Fletcher leaves behind. Not through presence, but through a seamless immersion into the fabric of the music. For nearly 4 decades, Fletcher has been more than just Dire Straits' keyboardist. He's been Mark Knopfler's trusted collaborator, from the studio to the stage, from classic analog sessions to today's Dolby Atmos mixes. And though his name rarely surfaces in the press, if you've ever sat motionless while listening to Telegraph Road, then chances are you've already met Guy Fletcher, without even knowing it. So, who is this quiet artist? Why did he choose to remain at the edge of the spotlight instead of stepping into its center? And what makes him the revered soundkeeper of one of the greatest bands of the 20th century? Let's explore the life of Guy Fletcher, not through applause, but through the melodies that quietly embed themselves in memory. Early life. Guy Edward Fletcher was born on May 24, 1960 in Maidstone, Kent, into a family where music wasn't a passion, it was the air they breathed. His father, Ted Fletcher, was a renowned sound engineer who would later found the audio equipment company Joe Meek. His mother, Barbara, was a studio vocalist who lent her voice to numerous musical productions throughout the 1960s, and if that wasn't enough, his uncle, also named Guy Fletcher, was a songwriter who penned hits for Elvis Presley and Cliff Richard. With a lineage like that, it seemed destiny had already written that young Guy would never live outside the realm of music. From an early age, he was encouraged to explore the world of sound. While other children played in the dirt or scribbled on walls, Guy was tinkering with cables, microphones, and recording gear. By the age of 4, he was already recording his own voice on cassette tapes, not because anyone told him to, but simply because he was fascinated by hearing himself played back. Family nights gathered around a hi-fi system, listening to the Beatles or Stevie Wonder, weren't just memories. They were the invisible threads weaving emotion and sound into one. As he grew older, Guy began teaching himself to play the keyboard, not through formal lessons, but by listening, mimicking, and figuring things out on his own. At age 15, when most teenagers were still unsure of their direction in life, Fletcher landed a job as a tape machine operator, at DJM Studios in London. It was his first professional environment where he was immersed in the technical precision of real music production, a place where every decision had to be exact down to the last decibel. And it was there that he learned a valuable lesson. Not every sound needs to be loud to be heard. Guy Fletcher's childhood wasn't marked by trauma or upheaval like many of his contemporaries. Instead, it was defined by quiet, the kind of quiet filled with sound, nurtured taste, and a deep emotional bond with music formed at home. It gave him the strongest foundation for a life spent backstage, where every note is played not to impress, but to reach the listener's soul. Early career, Guy Fletcher began his musical journey quietly, but with steady purpose. At just 15, he left school to work at DJM Studios in London as a tape operator, a job that paid little, didn't allow him to touch the main equipment, and offered no spotlight. But it placed him at the heart of a professional recording environment where he learned almost everything about production, how tape reels worked, how songs were structured, how microphones shaped space, and, above all, the art of listening. He may not have had a desk, but he was surrounded by major artists like Elton John and Chris Rea, a school with no chalkboard, but endless value. From these behind-the-scenes beginnings, Fletcher gradually moved forward. By the late 1970s, he was playing keyboards professionally for Steve Harley and Cockney Rebel, then working with Roxy Music and Brian Ferry, prominent figures in the art rock and new wave scenes. Though he was often the youngest in the group, Fletcher quickly earned a reputation for his discipline and his rare ability to blend into the musical fabric without trying to steal the spotlight. His turning point came in 1983 when he was invited to collaborate with Mark Knopfler on 2 film scores, Cal and Comfort and Joy. In the studio, Knopfler discovered that Fletcher was someone who didn't need much direction. He could hear the essence of a track and knew how to fill the space without overpowering the lead vocals or guitar. In 1984, Fletcher officially joined Dire Straits, just as the band was preparing to record Brothers in Arms, their most ambitious album yet. At only 23, he was entrusted with full control over the keyboard systems for the record. During the sessions at AIR Studios in Montserrat, Fletcher did more than just play instruments. He helped sculpt a new sonic landscape for the band, using synthesizers to add dimension and piano to convey quiet emotion between searing guitar solos. From a young studio technician, Guy Fletcher became a core musical force within Dire Straits, not through flashy solos or headline hits, but through precision, sensitivity, and unwavering dedication to the music. And from that point on, he never left Mark Knopfler's side, whether in the band or in the many projects that followed. Career success. In 1985, Brothers in Arms was released, an album that not only catapulted Dire Straits to global commercial success, but also revolutionized the way rock music was recorded and consumed. With over 30 million copies sold, it became one of the first albums to be fully recorded in digital format. And Guy Fletcher was the architect behind much of its digital soundscape, layering textures with keyboards and synthesizers. Songs like Your Latest Trick, So Far Away, and Why Worry All bear Fletcher's unmistakable touch. Gentle, fluid, always in support of Knopfler's guitar, but never competing with it. In Walk of Life, it's Fletcher's upbeat organ riff at the start that made the track an iconic sound of the 80s. It wasn't just backing, it was signature. The following Brothers in Arms World Tour spanned 13 months and took Fletcher around the globe. From Wembley Stadium to Australia, from Japan to South America, he stood behind his DX7 and Hammond organ, always in the background, yet his sound resonated through every venue. No speeches, no drama, just playing, precise, consistent, and deeply emotive. When Dire Straits went on hiatus, Fletcher remained close to Knopfler, collaborating on film scores such as The Princess Bride and Last Exit to Brooklyn. And when the band reunited to record On Every Street, 1991, Fletcher once again returned as a core studio presence. While the album didn't match Brothers in Arms in commercial success, the tour that followed lasted nearly 2 years and drew millions of fans. Fletcher, alongside Knopfler, Ilsley, and others, helped deliver epic performances, preserved in the On the Night concert film, where his Hammond organ work was a masterclass in calm, confident playing. When Dire Straits disbanded in 1995, most members moved on, but Fletcher didn't. He stayed by Knopfler's side as a loyal friend and collaborator, from the Sailing to Philadelphia tour, 2001, through Shangri-La, 2005, Kill to Get Crimson, 2007, Get Lucky, 2009, Privateering, 2012, Down the Road Wherever, 2018, and One Deep River, 2024. In every tour and album, Fletcher's role went far beyond the keyboard. He took part in mixing, production, song arrangement, and even audio engineering. In recent years, he has been instrumental in creating Dolby Atmos mixes of classic Dire Straits records, helping bring the legendary 80s sound into the age of immersive audio. Guy Fletcher was never the one who triggered the explosive moments, but he built the foundation for those moments to exist. In Dire Straits, and across the entire musical world of Mark Knopfler, he remains an irreplaceable anchor. Personal life. Amid long tours and demanding recording schedules, Guy Fletcher has managed to preserve something many artists lose: balance. He was never the kind of musician who lived solely for the stage. For Fletcher, music is essential, but it's never been everything. What matters more is having a place to return to and people who let him be exactly who he is. Since the late 1980s, Fletcher has been married to Laura, a private and soft-spoken American woman who's not involved in the entertainment industry. They live in a quiet town in West Sussex, England, in a home near the sea, where paddleboarding afternoons and family dinners are simply part of the daily rhythm. The couple has 2 sons, both raised far from media attention, and in the kind of simplicity that reflects the truest version of an artist's life. Despite playing music in front of crowds of tens of thousands, Fletcher has always stayed clear of the spotlight. No backstage parties, no media feuds, and almost no interviews that pry into his personal life. Instead, he communicates directly with fans through his personal website, where he posts travel blogs, shares tour photos, and sometimes just writes about a morning fishing trip gone sideways. Fans love Guy Fletcher not only for his music, but for the person he is: calm, genuine, unpretentious. Those who've met him backstage tend to say the same thing. He listens more than he speaks, never demands special treatment, and always behaves like a friend, not a celebrity. Beyond music, Fletcher has a deep love for outdoor sports: paddleboarding, golf, hiking. In a brief chat with fans, he once said, "I live near the sea, not to watch the waves, but to know that tomorrow still holds room for a new beginning." A simple line, but one that reveals so much. For Fletcher, peace doesn't lie in success, but in keeping his mind steady through life's currents. Guy Fletcher's life contains no scandals, no public meltdowns, no hidden controversies. But it's this completeness, this quiet, grounded existence, that makes him so remarkable in a world of rock and roll known more for chaos than calm. Controversies and rumors. Guy Fletcher is perhaps one of the very few musicians who has spent nearly 5 decades in the industry without becoming entangled in personal scandal. No controversies, no inflammatory quotes, no complaints about bandmates or the press. For him, music has never been a weapon to fight with, nor a tool to attract attention. It's simply the language he's chosen to exist within. However, there was one moment, just one, when his name surfaced in a public debate. And it wasn't about him personally, but about Dire Straits as a band. In 2011, their 1985 hit Money for Nothing was temporarily banned by the Canadian Broadcast Standards Council, CBSC, due to a lyric containing a term considered homophobic: faggot. The decision ignited a global backlash among Dire Straits fans. Some felt the ban was necessary to uphold modern social values, but a larger majority defended the song, noting that its lyrics were told from the perspective of a fictional character, a working-class man envious of the lavish lives of rock stars. The language was intended as social satire, not a personal manifesto. Guy Fletcher, then in his 50s and still working with Mark Knopfler, was the first among former band members to respond. He wrote a short but pointed note on his personal blog. "If you hear that song and don't realize the character in it is satirical, then maybe you're listening with prejudice, not with ears." No outrage, no counterattacks, just one calm, clear sentence, true to his nature. And then, he said nothing more, just as he has always done, letting music and quiet convictions speak in his place. Beyond that single moment, Fletcher has remained untouched by rumor or drama. No internal disputes, no fan backlash, no media scandals. Despite collaborating with high-profile artists, he has consistently maintained respectful, lasting relationships, from Mark Knopfler and John Ilsley to studio engineers and crew. In a showbiz world filled with endless feuds and sensational headlines, Guy Fletcher has stayed outside the fray. Not because he avoids confrontation, but because he believes the best artists are those who don't make their music orbit around their own ego, legacy, and influence. When people talk about Dire Straits, the first name that comes up is always Mark Knopfler. But if the band's music were a grand structure, then Guy Fletcher would be the one who laid its foundation, never asking for his name to appear on the front. During his 11 official years with Dire Straits, 1984 to 1995, and nearly 4 decades by Mark Knopfler's side, Fletcher never tried to step forward. Yet every time Brothers in Arms, Your Latest Trick, or On Every Street plays, his presence is unmistakable. In the deep, layered keyboard textures, in the carefully preserved silences that give emotion space to breathe. Fletcher's influence isn't measured by how many songs he wrote, but by how he made every song feel whole. He didn't deliver explosive moments. He built the space in which those moments could shine. He understood something crucial. Music isn't only about what you hear, but also about what's held back, cut short, or softened. And that's the art he's devoted his life to mastering. Among the Dire Straits fan community, Fletcher is revered as the keeper of melody, the quiet architect of the band's distinct sound, minimalist, yet emotionally resonant. Among producers and audio engineers, he's regarded as one of the most aesthetically refined sound minds in the UK. He has mixed and co-produced dozens of Mark Knopfler's solo albums, and has been instrumental in adapting classic analog recordings into immersive Dolby Atmos mixes, bringing legendary tracks into the sonic landscape of the 21st century. Beyond this, Fletcher has also released a number of solo albums, not to chase commercial success, but to preserve personal emotion. From Inamorata to Anomaly, his music rarely includes lyrics, but always carries a very Fletcher-esque sound, introspective, quiet, and unapologetically his own. In a world where recognition often comes late, or not at all, Guy Fletcher stands as a clear example of a different kind of artist, quiet, non-competitive, but profoundly enduring. He doesn't need a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, because for millions of music lovers, his name is already etched into the notes they'll never forget. Current life. After nearly 5 decades immersed in music, from the days of analog tape to the era of Dolby Atmos, Guy Fletcher still hasn't stopped. At 65, he's no longer standing on massive stages like in the Brothers in Arms days, but his presence in music endures. Quieter now, more refined and more personal than ever before. Today, Fletcher lives with his wife and 2 sons in West Sussex, southern England, where sea air, slow rhythms, and calm days create the perfect setting for an artist who's never needed noise. When he's not composing or producing, he golfs, paddleboards, and updates his personal blog, where he shares thoughts, tour diaries, and sometimes his favorite recipes. Musically, he remains at the core of Mark Knopfler's creative team. In 2024, the album One Deep River was released, a work deeply marked by Fletcher's touch, from its layered keyboards to transitions as smooth as wind. He also took the lead in mixing Brothers in Arms and Love Over Gold into Dolby Atmos, giving the Dire Straits classics a new dimension, not to alter memory, but to make it more alive. That same year, he re-released his solo album Anomaly, 2024, a collection of wordless, contemplative, and experimental pieces that feel like a quiet reflection from someone who's reached the peak but never left the path. In 2025, Fletcher is expected to co-produce and oversee sound coordination for Knopfler's European tour, not just performing, but working behind the scenes, arranging, mixing, and even managing stage lighting. Though he rarely appears on posters, he remains the final ear behind what audiences hear each night. Guy Fletcher has never announced a retirement, and perhaps that's because he doesn't need to. For him, music isn't a job that starts and ends. It's a current that flows through life, sometimes slowing, sometimes disappearing from view, but never truly stopping. And if you listen closely enough, somewhere in a new mix of Dire Straits or Knopfler, you'll still find Guy Fletcher, not in image, but in a ribbon of sound that suddenly makes you go still. Guy Fletcher is not the name people shout when they mention Dire Straits. He didn't write the hits, didn't appear on the album covers, and no iconic lyric is credited to him. But if you've ever played Brothers in Arms late at night, if you've ever felt chills when the piano opened Telegraph Road, then chances are you've quietly thanked him without even knowing it. Fletcher never tried to step out of the shadows because he understood some are born to shine and some are born to keep the light from going out. In a music world increasingly driven by noise and competition, Fletcher's quiet resilience, precision, and grace prove that some artists don't need to be mentioned often. But once they appear, they're irreplaceable. If you've ever been moved by the haunting silences in Dire Straits or Mark Knopfler's music, the ones no one names but no one forgets, leave a comment below. Who knows? Maybe you and I heard the same melody at different times from the same man. And if you want to keep discovering quiet yet unforgettable artists like Guy Fletcher, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. Because music doesn't only come from those in the spotlight, it also comes from people like Guy Fletcher, standing behind quietly and leaving behind echoes that never fade.